Hi everyone, thank you for coming. The Martin Luther King Jr. holiday celebrates the life and legacy of a man who brought hope and healing to America. We commemorate as well the timeless values he taught us through his example. The values of courage, truth, justice, compassion, dignity, humility, and service that so radiantly defined Dr. King's character and empowered his leadership. On this holiday, we commemorate the universal, unconditional love, forgiveness, and nonviolence that empowered his revolutionary spirit. Yet, Dr. King knew that it wasn't enough just to talk the talk, that he had to walk the walk for his words to be credible. And so we commemorate on this holiday the man of action, who put his life on the line for freedom and justice every day, the man who braved threats in jail and beatings, and who ultimately paid the highest price to make democracy a reality for all Americans. On the King holiday, people learn about the power of unconditional love, even for one's adversaries, as a way to fight injustice and diffuse violent disputes. It is a time to show them the power of forgiveness in the healing process, at the interpersonal as well as international levels.
Martin Luther King Jr. Day is not only for celebration and remembrance, education and tribute, but above all, a day of service. All across America on the holiday, his followers perform service in hospitals and shelters and prisons, and wherever people need some help. It is a day of volunteering to feed the hungry, rehabilitate housing, tutoring those who can't read, mentoring at-risk youngsters, consoling the brokenhearted, and 1,000 other projects for building a beloved community of his dream. In this spirit, and in honor of Dr. King, we would like to share our stories of community and service with you today.
The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a man of God, an ardent follower of Christ. In his speeches and sermons, it is his firm foundation in faith which inspired and guided him, and in turn inspires us. To be a Christian is to be called to service, and this message of his is not new. In fact, it's one of the basic tenets of the rule of St. Benedict, that the Benedictine life is a school of service. St. Benedict, quoting scripture, says, "Is there anyone here who yearns for life and desires to see good days? If you hear this, and your answer is, I do, God then directs these words to you. If you desire true and eternal life, keep your tongue free from vicious talk, and your lips from all deceit. Turn away from evil and do good. Let peace be your quest and aim. See how the Lord in his love shows us the way of life. Clothed then with faith and the performance of good service, let us set out on this way with the gospel as our guide." So, let's translate into action God's holy teachings here at Portsmouth to establish a school for the Lord's service, with the good for all concerned and to safeguard love. St. Benedict warns that at first it will appear daunting, and it will be difficult at the beginning, but he promises that with perseverance, our hearts will overflow with the inexpressible delight of love.
Everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve, and you don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from the Drum Major Instinct speech.
We learned from a young age about Martin Luther King's legacy of resistance to segregation. We learned about his activities in Birmingham and Selma, how he helped to organize local students, farmers, workers into nonviolent confrontation with those who would uphold Jim Crow. We hear about bus boycotts and sit-ins We hear about, I have a dream, and I have been to the mountaintop. But what we often don't realize is that he was a leader whose positions, goals, and tactics evolved as time went on. By 1965, he had made great progress towards the legislative goals he and his Southern Christian Leadership Conference had set out to accomplish. But frustrated with the slow pace of real change, he turned his attentions to ways in which not only black people, but everyone who had been left behind by the American dream could bring an end to the oppression that they suffered. In a 1967 speech called The Three Evils, he said, "Again, we have deluded ourselves into believing the myth that capitalism grew and prospered out of the Protestant ethic of hard work and sacrifice. The fact is that capitalism was built on the exploitation and suffering of black slaves, and continues to thrive on the exploitation of the poor, both black and white, both here and abroad. The time has come for America to face the inevitable choice between materialism and humanism. We must also realize that the problems of racial injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power." He realized that poverty, injustice, and hopelessness were not simply social problems to be addressed, but a vital component of the system that kept racism alive, and that by attacking poverty in their communities, people could undermine both racism's power and its draw. Let us go back to what King said about how anybody could be great. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. King's words were, as always, carefully chosen. He was speaking directly to the most vulnerable people in society, telling them that they too had been endowed by God with the ability to do what he had done, to make positive change in their communities and help dismantle the organs of oppression from the bottom up. And all they needed to do so was two hands and a heart guided by love for one's fellow human being. King was assassinated exactly 2 months after making this sermon. He was in Tennessee, supporting sewer workers, black and white, in a strike for better working conditions. But his words weren't cut short by an assassin's bullet. They rang out like a bell in the minds of millions of Americans and represent a part of his legacy that cannot be separated from his dream of racial equality. I would like, therefore, to show you a small selection of the groups who continued King's work after his death and the ways in which they put these immortal words into action. The National Urban League. The National Urban League is the oldest community-based civil rights organization in the US. It was formed in New York City in 1910 from the merger of 3 different black charities, and their chapters have been working to educate and serve nearly 300 communities since then. The Urban League, in fact, hosted the planning meetings for King's March on Washington and participated actively in the Civil Rights Movement. In addition to their political work, advocating for racial justice, housing, healthcare, and education for all, they also run a number of national initiatives to improve the lives of all people in their communities. These include Restore Our Homes, which assists homeowners who are facing foreclosure, the Urban Empowerment Fund, which provides loans and business training to over 10,000 small businesses a year, and the Community Health Worker Program, which trains people to educate their local communities about health issues like AIDS, diabetes, obesity, and connects their neighbors with health counseling, mental health care, and substance abuse programs. Here in Rhode Island, they also run a food pantry and a program to provide poor people with the professional clothing they need to advance their careers. Next is the 100 Black Men of America and the National Council of 100 Black Women of America. Founded in 1963 and 1970 respectively, they have over 150 chapters combined. Both organizations focus on mentoring young people and providing support to their neighbors. They provide access to healthcare, tutoring, and economic support to people in need in their communities. They give scholarships, manage after-school programs, and provide STEM workshops to underserved children. The organizations emphasize the power of personal, long-term connections with people, especially young people in need, as embodied in the motto, "What they see is what they'll be." So Others Might Eat is an excellent example of the thousands of local organizations doing important service work in cities all across America. Founded in 1970 by a Jesuit priest named Father Horace McKenna, SOME focuses on helping the homeless, the elderly, and the ill in the DC area. They serve nearly 400,000 meals a year, provide thousands of doctors and dentist visits, and run Isaiah House, which provides support and mental health care to over 200 people. Last year alone, they provided clothing to over 14,000. They also provide safe and affordable housing to over 1,000 people, including 140 families. They also run job training programs with a focus on putting students into jobs that pay living wages. This is a small slice of the truly immense number of organizations who have continued the fight for civil rights through service to their fellow man. Some organizations are national in scale, and some are local. Some focus on political advocacy, some on fundraising, and some on local action. Some attend to the daily needs of their neighbors, and some look towards securing a better future for their community as a whole. All of them are doing their part to continue the work that Martin Luther King took up. I will say this again, so that there is no ambiguity in your mind on this point. Every one of you who looks out at the world, horrified at the racism and the prejudice that you see, horrified at the hatred and the suffering that people endure, each one of you holds within yourself the power to bring it all tumbling down, to be the revolution that we need. And your only weapon need be your heart and your hands. I'd like to close with two more quotes. The first by Rabbi Tarfon in the Pirkei Avot, which is a Jewish text on ethics. And he says, "It is not your responsibility to finish the work of perfecting the world, but you are not free to desist from it either." And the second is from the Gospel of Matthew, quoting Jesus, who says, "Come, O blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Truly, I say to you, as you did for one of the least of these my brethren, you did for me." Thank you.
A meditation on St. Augustine and helping others. St. Augustine teaches that good deeds should spring forth from the soul like fruit from a tree. Serving others is in fact a vocation for humanity, a call to practice and stand for justice and freedom every day of our lives. To practice justice is to serve others, and serving others cultivates great love and compassion within us. Augustine writes, "As the earth produces her fruit, so at your command, the command of its Lord God, our soul yields works of mercy according to its kind, loving our neighbor in the relief of physical necessities, having in itself seed according to its likeness. Aware of our own infirmity, we are moved to compassion to help the indigent, assisting them in the same way as we would wish to be helped if we were in the same distress, and not only in easy ways, like the grass-bearing seed, but with the protection and aid given with a resolute determination, like the tree bearing fruit. This means such kindness as rescuing a person suffering from injustice from the hand of the powerful, and providing the shelter of protection by the mighty force of just judgment. Therefore, under God we are not only free, but are morally obliged to come to the aid of those in distress, as is written in Galatians 5:13. You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge in the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love.
The reality is, service isn't always easy. Volunteerism often doesn't fit into a tidy box scheduled perfectly in our calendar, asking of us the exact amount of time, energy, and talent we have to spare. Frequently, service asks more, looks to us to make sacrifices, and challenges us to move beyond our comfort zone and tap into resources within us that we might not even be aware of. And when we do, the rewards don't necessarily come in the way we might hope. There are no parades, there are no trophies, often not even participation ribbons. But, like the discovery of those places within ourselves that service asks us to seek out, the rewards can be surprisingly profound and more gratifying than we ever could have imagined. Our next speaker, Alyson Novick, is the Development Director of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Community Center in Newport, an organization that I know many of our school family have connections to. Ms. Novick generously agreed to share some time with us today to talk about the power and impact of volunteerism, both on a personal and institutional level. Please join me in welcoming her.
I appreciate that. That's a wonderful introduction, Mrs. Kirk. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Very dark out there. I can't see your faces that well. I'm going to try to connect with you. I'm delighted to be with you this morning as you mark Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. Now, some of you may, wow, that's impressive. Thank you. Some of you may have been to the MLK Community Center. I know Mr. Chenoweth is a former trustee, way up there in the back. Mr. Chenoweth, shout out to you. So for those of you who have been to the MLK Community Center in Newport, I thank you. And I hope you're also going to indulge me while I describe our work to your fellow students and colleagues. Named in 1968 after the man we honor today, the center has been a resource of help and hope since 1922. We're in Newport. We're on Marcus Wheatland Boulevard, which is off of Broadway behind Salvation Cafe, kind of. It's probably a good reference for you guys. We serve the most vulnerable in Newport County. And that isn't restricted to a particular demographic. It's not restricted to a particular region. We serve clients from Portsmouth. We serve clients that are probably a stone's throw from this campus. We serve children and families and seniors, the working poor, the homeless, the disabled, those who are sick, be it in mind, body, or spirit, or perhaps all three. We feed the hungry. We provide vibrant education programs where young and school-aged children learn, grow, and thrive, and that allow their parents to work in confidence knowing that their children are well cared for. We offer engaging programs for seniors and adults. The MLK Community Center strengthens our community. Now, we're an independent, not-for-profit with a rich tradition of being a place where our community comes to get help, but just as much as a place where our community goes to give help. Now, today you're considering the value of service. So I can easily examine the value of service through the lens of economics. The MLK Community Center served about 3,200 people last year, which was our most ever, and stresses us and really pushes us to our capacity, both from a human capital standpoint and from a physical resources standpoint, certainly from our budget. Now, we have an operating budget of just shy of $1.4 million. And at our busiest, when summer camp is in session, we only employ a paid staff of 25 people, but only 12 of those people are full-time people. And it's only because of the dedication and the tireless effort of selfless volunteers that our programs exist. Last year, over 650 volunteers gave over 7,000 hours. Let me say that again. 650 people working over 7,000 hours that they gave from their heart, with their hands. They didn't get paid for it. As Mrs. Kerr so beautifully said, there were no parades. We do have a volunteer event once a year that we thank them, but they did it because of their community. The mission of the center mattered to them. Now, the economic reality of that service is the center wouldn't exist without volunteers. We would have to shutter some programs, radically reduce others, and new programs most likely wouldn't be able to be created. So indexing Bureau of Labor Statistics data, the Coalition Independent Sector calculates the value of Rhode Island not-for-profit volunteer service at $24.34 an hour. So we can then know that the cash value of this service last year exceeded $170,000. In my world, that's impressive. It's essential. But that's not what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about the human value of service. Volunteers have a deep and profound effect on the center, not just for our clients, on the staff, on our board, on all of us who come to the center, indeed upon our whole shared community. Volunteers are everywhere at the center every day. They arrive at the center at 6:45 in the morning to start the coffee and prepare the meal for our daily breakfast program. Volunteers, in addition to preparing and serving meals, mentor children in our after-school program and in our preschool. Pick up, weigh, receive, stock, literally tons of food. When you're a volunteer and someone shows up with a food drive, perhaps from a school like yours, that they're bringing in several hundred pounds of food, that usually tends to coincide with when it's raining or it's snowing. And the food still has to be brought in. It doesn't matter what the weather's like. We still have to push it up the ramp and weigh it. Again, there aren't any parades. This isn't about what the volunteer gets. It's what the center gets. And most importantly, what our clients get. Volunteers deliver food with a friendly visit to homebound seniors. They help us with data entry. They keep the center clean inside and out. Staff our events, answer the phones, act as ambassadors in the community. Our volunteers are an army of caring people who understand the value of selfless service, and the center couldn't exist without them. I often get asked, what's it like to work in a not-for-profit? Sometimes it's by students who are looking to think about that as a career. Sometimes it's by people who are mid-career that are considering maybe doing some volunteer work or coming to work in a not-for-profit. And so I say, is it rewarding? Absolutely. Exhausting? Definitely. I've explained my professional experience this way. There's always too much, and there's never enough. There's too much need. There's too much work. There's never enough money. There's never enough staff. There's never enough time. There's never enough volunteers. Those who give up their time and their talents help bridge those deficits. Now, the MLK Community Center is not a religious organization, but like many of you, however, I'm Catholic, and I see those countless hours of help in a spiritual context. The essential question to me is, when you meet your fellow human on the road, in dire need, or even in moderate need, it isn't what will happen to him if I don't help him, it's what will happen to me if I don't. The value of service is beautifully and compassionately expressed by Nord Lang, who's one of our very dedicated volunteers. And he shared this at our volunteer service awards dinner that we had. And I just love it, and I thought you might enjoy it. So Nord says, for me, it is simple, service and gratitude. As the little man in his homespun cloth who shook an empire to its core stated so eloquently, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. The MLK provides an opportunity to begin to put this into practice, to give back a little bit. As with any act of giving, who benefits more, the giver or the receiver? In addition to the mechanics of providing food, we get to talk to people on both a casual and sometimes serious level. I enjoy getting to know the regular guests a little more each week and meeting new guests, typically people I otherwise wouldn't get to know. Volunteering provides a perspective that is simply unattainable working a regular job. I see people in my downtown community I can now greet on a more personal level. In the words of Pope Francis, among us, who is above must be in service of the others. This doesn't mean we have to wash each other's feet every day, but we must help one another. I am more than fortunate to work alongside people like Nord, whose commitment to selfless service does far more than provide positive line items on a budget. I am humbled beyond measure by their sacrifice of time, their generosity of spirit, and their abiding belief in the worth and dignity of their fellow man. And we've been looking at this question, and it's also in my remarks here. And Dr. King said, in a sense, every day is Judgment Day. And we, through our deeds and words, our silence and speech, are constantly writing in the book of life. Light has come into the world, and every man must decide whether he will walk in the light of creative altruism or the darkness of destructive selfishness. This is the judgment. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And my personal challenge to each of you is, if not you, were you, were you, were you, were you, were you, who? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Novick. We appreciate your time, and we're happy to tell you that the proceeds from today's Dress Down Day will be going towards the MLK Center in Newport. Community service, non-paying work
done by a person or a group of people that benefits others in need. It will benefit others in need, but in my opinion, it will return the benefit to the volunteer as well. For the past 2 summers, I have dedicated my time to meaningful service that will significantly impacted several children's futures. During the summer of 2016 and 2017, I interned for NJ Seeds as a Young Scholars Mentor. What is NJ Seeds? Well, NJ Seeds is an organization that changes lives through education. Seeds searches for the top students from the least privileged communities, motivated, ambitious, hardworking students who want more. This organization spends more than a year with them, during the summers and Saturday classes, providing the academics, life skills, and access to thrive at the nation's top academic schools. Working with NJ Seeds was a no-brainer, but little did I know what I was getting myself into. So, like I said, the summer of 2016 and 2017, I worked as a Young Scholars Mentor. The Young Scholars program reaches children in 5th and 6th grades and strives to nurture their love of learning, critical thinking skills, self-confidence, respect for others, and sense of responsibility towards the immediate and larger communities. There are 3 steps to YSP over the course of 14 months. A 5-week summer session, classes each Saturday during their academic school year, and a second 5-week summer session. I was placed with the first 5-week summer session students. Walking in the first day, I didn't know what to expect. I knew that my position as a mentor was to be a liaison for the students, teachers, and the NJC's office, but also find that balance between being an admirable friend to the students and being a trusted advisor in an academic setting. These kids were bouncing off the walls with energy, but possessed an eagerness to learn, just so that they could prove to their parents and home neighborhoods that they were destined to be something greater. One of their early projects was to write an essay and present their role model. One presentation that stuck with me was this kid named Socks. We called him Socks because he truly had the coolest socks. He said how his role model was Biggie Smalls. If you don't know who that is, I'm a little disappointed in you. But he was a notorious rapper in the 90s, and he was known for his songs Juicy, Mo Money, Mo Problems, Hypnotize, and Big Papa. Socks said how he identified closely with him due to a quote of his, which states, "We can't change the world unless we change ourselves." He said how he pertained to him and all the students in the Young Scholars Program because they are currently changing themselves in order to have a brighter future and hopefully impact the world in a positive way. Socks' meditation on Biggie Smalls made me realize that yes, I'm supposed to be that knowledgeable and resourceful figure to them, but instead I learned something from them. True passion. I applaud their perseverance and desire to sit through multiple classes during the summer. Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., these students were up learning concepts from Algebra 1 or discussing the preluding causes to the Revolutionary War. These kids could easily succumb to the craving of summertime fun, but instead they were there. Passion. That is what these kids are full of, and because of my service in the summer, I am grateful to have learned that from them. Why wouldn't I like to work with an organization that not only helped me get myself where I am, but also 2,000 other students? Just so you can imagine what kind of circumstances these students are from, I found a quote from an NJC's alum named Calvin Millen that says, "Imagine me walking through Irvington at age 12, weighed down by a backpack, the stresses of my hard-working parents who were trying to give their 4 children the opportunities they didn't have in Haiti. In fact, the seed story is one that often begins with struggle. The struggle of students who sit in uninspiring classrooms, feeling their potential bursting within them. The struggle of parents who fret every day as their children walk through unsafe neighborhoods, only to receive a totally inadequate education when they reach their destination." Calvin went on to Seton Hall Prep in West Orange, New Jersey, and later graduated from Georgetown University in 2016. NJCs truly changes lives. I plan to work with NJCs again in the future. Once again, I'm going to stress how amazing this organization is, only because their service is something truly praiseworthy and compassionate. I urge everyone to volunteer or work in any way possible for the benefit of others and yourself.
Once again from Coretta Scott King. Dr. King once said that we all have to decide whether we will walk in the light of creative altruism or the darkness of destructive selfishness. Life's most persistent and nagging question, he said, is, what are you doing for others? He would quote Mark 9:35, the scripture in which Jesus of Nazareth tells James and John, whosoever will be great among you shall be your servant, and whosoever among you will be the first shall be the servant of all. And when Martin talked about the end of his mortal life in one of his last sermons, on February 4th, 1968, in the pulpit of Ebenezer Baptist Church, even then, he lifted up the value of service as the hallmark of a full life. I'd like somebody to mention on that day Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others, he said. I want you to say on that day that I did try to in my life, to love and serve humanity.
We call you to commemorate this holiday by making your personal commitment to serve humanity with the vibrant spirit of unconditional love that was his greatest strength and which empowered all of the great victories of his leadership. And with our hearts open to this spirit of unconditional love, we can indeed achieve the beloved community of Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream. May we who follow Martin now pledge to serve humanity, promote his teachings, and carry forward his legacy into the 21st century.